Today at Collider, we're going behind the scenes of The Empress, Netflix's popular historical drama, to uncover how it was made, from the sets and filming locations to costumes, stunts, and the approach the cast took to portraying this fascinating chapter in history. Netflix's The Empress is only 2 seasons in, but it's captivating viewers with its entangled love story between 2 famous Austrian monarchs, Franz Joseph and Sisi, and the political unrest that slowly unfolded within the Habsburg monarchy. To bring the show to life, the creative team had to craft an atmosphere that captured both the lavish grandeur of 19th-century royal courts and the personal struggles of the characters. The first step in achieving that vision was designing the show's sets and finding real-life locations to stand in for historic ones. The goal was to create a world that felt both authentic and immersive. The production team wanted to transport the audience to 1850s Austria, but at the same time, they had to make sure that the sets were dynamic enough to support the personal dramas of the characters. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the opulent palace halls to the intimate chambers of Empress Elizabeth. The team used a mix of real locations and sets built from scratch and paid close attention to historical references while keeping in mind the emotional tone of the show. Although the series is set in Vienna, the filming locations were all outside of Austria. Season 1 of The Empress was filmed in the Bavarian region of Germany. Various small towns were used, which helped give a special flair to the series. Some real-life locations are the Cathedral Square in Bamberg, the St. George Minster in Dinkelspool, and the Rock Garden in Sandsbury, which all acted as stand-ins for various parks and castle scenes. As for Sisi's childhood home, the famous Possenhofen Castle, the production team used shots of Eichshof Castle. For her future residence at the famous Schönbrunn Palace, the team used Weissenstein Palace in Pommersfelden, Germany, as a stand-in. With the second season, the location team expanded its filming locations to other European countries. A few scenes were filmed in Italy, but a majority of the season was shot in Prague. Many iconic locations of the Czech capital are seen in the show: Hradčany Square, Loretanska Street, Malá Strana, and the royal route that stretches from Nerudova Street to the City Hall, stairs to K. Hradu Street, just to name a few. All locations were dressed to represent historical accuracies, with flags, flowers, and even horse-drawn carriages decorating the streets. But the sets and locations are just one part of the equation. What truly brings The Empress to life is the cast's portrayal of real historical figures, most notably Empress Elizabeth, played by the talented Devrim Lingnau. In an interview, Devrim recounts her casting process. "I had to audition with many different young actors for Franz, and none of them really fit me. Our showrunner Katharina Eisen was already a bit desperate because the chemistry between the men and me was somehow not right. But then she told me that there would be one actor at the very end in whom she had high hopes." The relationship between Sisi and Emperor Franz Joseph is the heart of the show, so they needed to find an actor who could closely work with her to develop a complex, evolving dynamic, one that blends historical facts with emotional complexity. It wasn't until actor Philippe Froisson came in for a test screening that the stars began to align. Philip recalls, "I came into the room, the actor who had auditioned before me was still there, and Devrim already had her costume and wig on. And I just thought to myself, oh, okay, that must be Elizabeth." They both found out they got cast later that same day. The chemistry between the actors adds layers to the royal tension. But beyond their performances, they also had to bring the historical aspects of their characters to life. Historical accuracy, though crucial, sometimes takes a backseat to drama, particularly in a show that mixes historical events with fictional storytelling. One specific example is in the show, Franz proposes publicly to Elizabeth, but in real life, Franz had his mother, Archduchess Sophie, request permission from Elizabeth's mom. And speaking of Sophie, in the show she is reluctant over the marriage and often fights with the Empress, but that was for the sake of drama. In reality, Sophie's letters and diaries positively describe her daughter-in-law. Actress Melika Farutin, who plays Sophie, mentions that most of the cast met at the first table reading. Giles Foreman, the series' acting coach, wanted them to get to know each other better as part of the preparation leading up to the shoot. They only started working on and getting to know their characters 2 to 3 weeks before production. Most of the acting exercises consisted of music and dance. Like at drama school, we moved a lot to special music, improvised, and explored the relationships between the characters, Melika recalls. These exercises allowed the actors to get fully involved in their characterizations and build upon their relationships within the series. The main thing for them was to find the emotional depth in their characters and how they could relate to the other characters. But The Empress isn't just about dialogue and dramatic palace scenes, there's also a lot of action and movement. From royal hunting scenes to horseback riding, the show features a surprising amount of physicality. One of the key elements the production team wanted to include was the action within the royal court. the tension between power, diplomacy, and physical combat. While The Empress isn't an action series in the traditional sense, there are several key moments where the actors needed to convincingly perform stunts, like sword fights or physical confrontations. Some of the actors, especially the male ones, had to undergo fight choreography and learn how to use swords and guns to accurately portray duels and hunting scenes. Every fight scene was meticulously planned, with each movement designed to convey not only physical skill, but emotional tension as well. Movement was also important in the series. Swedish movement tutor Liana Nyquist was hired to teach the actors how to properly move as their royal characters. With her, the actors did a lot of dance exercises and bodywork to find out how their characters move. She made them approach the character on an intellectual level but also on a physical one. Working with Liana and the stunt coordinator, they also trained the actors on how to move in their large and often heavy costumes. It was a challenge for me to move authentically in my costume and not look stiff. At the same time, the costume forced me into a posture that helped me a lot to embody my character, recounts Almila Bagriacic, who plays Ava. Perhaps the most visible element of the series is the stunning costumes. Costume designer Gabrielle Reimer faced the monumental task of not only recreating the royal attire of the era, but also crafting garments that told the story of the characters. She and her team were able to research plenty, as there were many portraits and photos taken of Elizabeth and the royal family during their lifetime. Some of the Empress's real-life dresses are on display in museums across Vienna, including Schönbrunn Palace and Hofburg Imperial Palace. In interviews, Gabrielle says she read a lot of books and studied the couture designs of Christian Dior and Alexander McQueen. She also ensured that the costumes paralleled the characters' story arcs during the season. For example, Archduchess Sophie often embodied a powerful masculine style and consistently wore tight, high-necked clothes. As the season progressed, Gabrielle had her wear bigger and stronger costumes to match her ascent into power alongside her son. A total of over 2,000 costumes were used for the series. Many of the extras' outfits were sourced from costume houses in London and Rome. For the main characters, costumes were either custom-made or remade from existing costumes. She worked with a wardrobe master in Berlin who knew how to sew historically accurately, and for this reason it can take a month to create a dress. Elizabeth's wedding dress was one of the most iconic dresses the team designed. Gabrielle and her team wanted to create something depressing and play on the idea that her wedding is a horror, as if the whole kingdom comes and wants something from her. They designed her dress to be high-necked and tight, using a lace turtleneck and a huge crinoline. The skirt's circumference alone was about 6 feet with many layers of tulle and embroidery involved. The wedding gown took about 4 weeks to make, but the result was worth it. The Empress, where history meets drama, and the behind-the-scenes magic takes us beyond the royal palace. Thanks for watching.